Now these, this is first draft stuff, so, you know, be fine. But using colour, it does have a stable little golf club round of applause for Hayley. Yeah. The DMAC English budget is going all out. Next year it'll be on glossy paper. Yeah, it's such a nice colour baby brown. Yeah. All right. Okay, so at points we'll come back to this. That on the front is my advice. It's as simply put as I can. But I think this is the best advice I can give you, and it puts all onus on you, which is what this is. You must know the task before you start it. Without that, you can invest a whole lot of energy doing stuff that's not going to be very helpful. And I had to remind myself of that in preparing for this presentation. I've got to gear this towards the task. Because I wanted to do all this contextual stuff and show off. Honestly, there was a little bit of me that wanted to show off all I knew about the film and how much I've learned in the last couple of months. I've got to get over that. That's not relevant. It's not helpful. You guys have to know the task, and that's something I want you to come back to at the end of this unit and at exam revision time. Do you know how to do this task well? You've got to know the text inside out, and then we've got to be able to write well. Seems pretty simple. But the degrees to which you can do each of those three things, that determines the calibre of your writing. That determines the assessor's impression of your skill in this subject. So those are the basics. So I have tried to make this about writing. Today, as I said, process for thinking and planning, a response to a new essay question, and we're going to have a look at 2 mini essay questions today that is considered healthy. We'll have a look at question types and how you should respond to different question types given the command term. We're going to have a look at how to deconstruct a question, and I'm going to ask you to repeat that process today and in your own time. We'll have a look at, I wrote this at the start, that we'll look at how to use evidence effectively, but that's the one that I haven't explored to this point. We need to continue that as well as I would have liked anyway. How to write about character with more insight. It's a simple thing, but the construction of character is really deliberate in this film, and we need to address it with a level of complexity. And then how to write with economy. So how to write exactly what you want to say, and to keep that 1 hour as focused as it can be. All right. Here, there's I think we've just leafed through. I meant to have the criteria. We'll have a look at those for the sake of the exam, if we get time at the end. All right. But for us to know the task, you're going to know how you're being assessed. So we'll put those up and see if there are any questions. Question types: how to deconstruct a question in here, maybe. And reading through that was my goals when I sat down to write it. There are 20 practice questions. The last one's a bit dodgy, but that's all right. Hopefully you get something out of it today. All right. Really appreciate some feedback after today. If there's stuff that I've missed or stuff that you want us to focus on in the next few weeks of our instruction, let me know via email and I'll share it around. All right. Number 1. Refer to the examiner's assessment criteria in your toolkit. It's not in your toolkit. Can I bring this up and it'll be cool with the wiggity whack stuff that's going on? All right, mate. I'm pretty technologically advanced. All right.
Guys, can we just have a laugh so we can actually hear it?
Thanks, Mr. Docking. That is primarily why you're here, is to prod them when necessary. Thanks, sir. What are we? Rear window? No, not rear window. We want faculty. No. We want. There we go. All right. Honest show of hands. Who has not seen this document yet? Alright, so this is a really important thing to find. Get to the VCAR website. This is the stuff that the assessors use at the end of the year to determine your grade out of 10. So, in summary, knowledge and understanding of the text. We're talking about section A. Development of a coherent analysis, use of evidence, and how well you write, control and effectiveness of language use as appropriate to the task. This here is the breakdown of the task itself, which you can't really see if I get rid of that. And the goal today is to hit here from 7 up. And I think everyone, considering you're here today, that means you're switched on, you're keen, and you're willing to do some work. That means everyone here can get at least a 7 in year 2. That's our goal. I think that's a base standard that we can expect of you guys, just by doing some basic things really well. So you've got to demonstrate a clear knowledge and the difference up to 9 or 10, a close and perceptive reading of the text. So not just showing the knowledge, you have interpreted that knowledge and turned it into your own reading of the text. That just means spending time thinking about the meaning and purpose of each box film. And when you're thinking, writing down some notes. I mean, using those notes in class and sharing that in the class discussion, making sure that you're challenging your teachers' interpretations, getting them to justify their point of view, having debates with people in your year group about their interpretation, their reading of the text, to help you fine-tune how you perceive this text. At the 7 level, you've got to make sure you've understood the topic. We're going to step through a process today to make sure that we've done sufficient work at that thinking and planning stage. But up at the higher level, demonstrate an understanding of the implications of the topic. What does the assessor hope we do with the topic? What do they want out of it? Often, and this year in its first year, this text probably will have very accessible questions. And over the course of the 4 years, they might become more complex. You know, there's only so many questions you can ask. So in its first year of the study, it's probably going to be accessible, which means you've got the challenge of trying to take that accessible question somewhere more complex. To look at its implications, using an appropriate strategy for dealing with it and exploring its complexity. And then finally, this is the bit that we as a school, as a staff, we need to continue to work on. Cogent, controlled, well-substantiated discussion, using precise and explicit language. How well do you do? So those skills that we would expect at Year 12 standard of the accuracy and precision of your writing, that's stuff that you need to keep working on, and you can get much, much better at that over the course of the next 8 months if you make it a priority and if you work at your own written expression, spelling and grammar, punctuation usage, basics, and then developing that to become someone who is really in command of what they're writing and who's a little experimental in the way they're structuring sentences, who uses sophisticated vocabulary, who varies their approach rather than being repetitious. Okay. So go to the VCAR website, print yourself off a copy of that, whack it up at your study space. When you're doing some writing and you finish that practice piece, go and assess yourself. Use this, print off 10 copies, use this to assess your mates' work. Give them some feedback that is relevant to those criteria, that uses the words and the language of that criteria so that you're getting familiar with what assessors are looking for. All right. Cool. Back to this bit. How do we know the task? Have a look at the examiner's assessment criteria. To get 7 or higher on those criteria, you must look at the director's construction of meaning. If you've had me in the last year and a half, you're probably really sick of me saying that. But I hope that Year 7s get sick of us saying that. That's how to unlock complexity. So how is the film put together? If we're doing that, we can analyse the relationship between the director and his audience. If we're doing that in every sentence of a text response essay, you're giving yourself a really good chance of advertising to the assessor that you know what you're doing, that you know the task. So think about, and I'm after suggestions here, think about words that you can use to make sure you are focusing on the director. So I've got Hitchcock, director, creator, cinematographer, I think. We can use that.
The director uses a cinematographer, so yeah, that absolutely.
Auteur, I've got to look that up. We can talk about him as the master of suspense. Have you got some other terms to help me out? Because I'm looking at ways that we can vary our expression. And at the moment I've got Hitchcock and director. Have you guys got others? If we go back to that criteria, which is assessing your ability to use language fluently and precisely and with command, you need to make sure you've got variety. So that's something, it's a mechanical thing that you can go and practice. All right. Okay. Here's a process, and I don't know why, but it's 6 steps. And for each step, we're going to spend a minute. I'll explain the steps, and then I'll give you some writing time, and we might press pause on this thing. Cool. To tackle a new essay question, firstly we must demonstrate that we understand. We need to get to understand what the question is asking us. So firstly, for that minute, I'm going to ask you to read and think, no pens, just to read carefully, and to allow your brain to do its job and think about what you're being asked to do. If you're writing at this point, then hesitate. I want you to just focus on these written instructions. The second minute, I'm going to ask you to define the important terms. That's a pretty straightforward step. Is that something, hands up, is that something that you already do in deconstructing a question? If it's not something that you necessarily already do, that needs to be a basic step that you take to make sure that you do understand what the question is asking, and then hopefully deepen your understanding so that you identify what type of question it is and what type of response is expected by the assessor. Thirdly, consider the context of the text, and you only got 60 seconds in which to do this. That's where you draw on your existing knowledge of the world of the text and the director's purpose. What are the historical, political and social views and values which are being explored through this text? What comments are being made about Hitchcock's point of view, about his arguments through the text? At that point, once we've considered all this broader level stuff, then it's a good idea to start formulating your contention and find some grey area that allows you to demonstrate that you're not simplistic in your thinking. And if you agree with a statement wholeheartedly and don't really present much range other than what the topic suggests, questions leading you to, then you'll not be rewarded. So you've got to demonstrate your thinking, find some of that grey area we've been talking about in classes. Analyse the text construction when you're gathering evidence. So using those words, Hitchcock, director, to organise the evidence you're going to use in a plan. Even at planning stage, use those keywords. So that from the get-go, your focus is on how he constructed it. And finally, to get to that interesting point of your reading of the text, your interpretation of the film's purpose, the director's motives, as relevant to that given question. What I haven't written up there goes unsaid. Your job is to answer the question that you've chosen. Right. So there's your question. 6 minutes on the clock. Copy it down. To what extent does Rear Window offer the audience a Hollywood happy ending? Nice. All right. Go back in the room. What's the first thing you learnt about the nature of time? It goes. Yeah. It's uncompromising. And when at a certain point I said, okay, by now you should be writing your contention. Is anyone up for that stage? Very good. Alright, here's the deal. I'm trying to break this down into only 60-second steps so that you do feel pressure. I'm deliberately instructing that for you because I know that you enjoy that sort of situation. So, time goes. I'm going to write that up on the board. It does. It does. It goes. So we're going to deal with that. We can't change the nature of the task. It is in time conditions. The good thing is that everyone has the same conditions, 43 or whatever, 1,000 students, all have the same time conditions. Your ability to manage that and to think clearly, even though there is perceived pressure, or real palpable pressure, that's what's going to discriminate your responses from those who can't handle the time. So that's the first thing. You've got to recognise it's a time task. So practice that in your own time. Put yourself under the pump occasionally after you've done some in-depth thinking so that you can draw on the existing ideas. What type of question is it? Define any important terms. To what extent does Rear Window offer the audience a Hollywood happy ending? Anyone, please help me out.
To what extent?
Yes. Is important. Therefore, there's a certain response that we should take. Who was that, sorry?
That was me.
Very good. Thanks, Marla. To what extent? Did you all identify that that is the type of question? Yeah, good. So what do we do with this question? What is the appropriate response? Yeah.
Well, it's you can respond to it well to show positives and negatives and then sort of conclude for you overall.
Yeah. Okay, good. If throughout the whole piece you're dealing with that tension, that yes, it could be perceived as a happy ending or no, if you're dealing with that, that means you're grappling with the complexities of the question. You want to see that. If you were to represent this in a visual way, I'd say that it would look something like this, a scale where this is happy Hollywood ending and this is something else entirely. Where on that scale does your response sit? If it fits in here, you are limiting yourself. The assessors are hoping that you've brought some of your own original thinking at planning stage to this question. So, has anyone got a stance that would allow us to demonstrate complex thinking?
My contention was Hitchcock offers the audience a Hollywood happy ending that challenges the audience to consider the film's deeper meaning.
Alright. What works about this response? Praise for Tom's contention, please. What works about it?
It shows you there's going to be both sides of the argument, which is basically a grey area.
Good. How could Tom's contention be improved, given the time condition?
More specific.
Yeah, good. This is becoming really quite rewarding that you know the next question I'm going to ask. Okay, that's really good. And I'm sure as you read it out, you would have thought something similar.
Yeah.
So what was the general phrase that you used? It was in the second part.
Challenges the audience to consider the film's deeper meaning.
The film's deeper meaning, cool. Which is spot on, Tom.
Yeah.
But I think we've got to, with more time, we've got to figure out what that is. Yeah, good. And then you can get to interpretation. Yeah. Did you get there? A bit more thinking?
I was kind of just thinking about specific scenes and how Hitchcock's like often something that then you look at it in more detail.
Of course. Okay, good. I'm going to give you some more time once we've done some of this stuff. Yeah, so you don't have 4 minutes to be more specific with that. Right, good. To what extent does Rear Window offer the audience a Hollywood happy ending? All right, let's go to the next step. The context of the text in relation to the question. What is happening in Hollywood at the time? Did anyone get down some relevant contextual information in that? Offer the audience. Yeah, Marla again.
I said mainly gender roles, and the
Yep. Nice. Good job. Hollywood. No, yeah, sorry. So, Carthyism, sorry, and gender roles, gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
Stereotypical gender role. Cool. If you don't have this, scribble it down. All right. What does this allow Marla to do before she's formulated her contention? These two notes. What's the advantage of having those two notes in your plan?
Shows background knowledge.
Yeah. More than that, which is really important. Really important. But by showing background knowledge, you've opened up a door to something else entirely.
You can provide context to like why what someone has done.
Good. And then get to this stuff, the higher order thinking of interpreting the text's purpose. Yeah. So at introduction level, you've got to do that stuff of demonstrating some background knowledge, so that when you get to your linking sentence of your body paragraph and you're trying to tie it all together and demonstrate the validity of your arguments, you've got something to pin it back to hang your arguments from. And that will mean, if you do it consistently throughout your essay, you've got something to write that's meaningful in your conclusion, where you're challenged to fully resolve the topic and convince the assessor that you are 8 or 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10, that you've thought carefully. And the cool thing about that is, just by making that note in that 60 seconds of planning time, you get to figure out your interpretation as you're developing your arguments. And by the time you get to your conclusion, you've had 50 minutes thinking time. And then it can be quite sophisticated, not just formulaic. So do bother with that stuff. It's really important. It opens up a whole lot for you. Formulate a contention that has some grey area. I think we kind of got to that with Tom's response. Has anyone got another contention that you think has got some grey area, given the limited scope?
I have a contention.
Excellent.
It's really long though, so...
That's all right.
Okay. Hitchcock's Rear Window explores the challenges both men and women face within their relationships in the 1950s, where women no longer submitted to their damsel in distress roles, and hence the typical Hollywood happy ending was challenged.
What's your name?
Sophie.
Sophie, can you give a high five in the direction? That was awesome. Cool. Really long, but no wasted words, and not general. It was rather specific. Strong. Good job. The assessor reads that sentence and thinks, got somewhere to go. Here's a thinker. Excellent job. Should we copy it down? It's better than mine.
Yes, please.
Go again.
How slow do you want me to read it?
At my writing pace,
Okay.
please.
Hitchcock's Rear
Slow up.
Window. It's 3
Yep.
words.
Yeah, I know, mate. Feel the pressure of time. All right, I'm even abbreviating.
Explores the challenges.
Explores is a good word to use. Challenges, again.
Both men and women face.
Man.
See what I did there? Really sophisticated stuff. Yep.
Within their relationships in the 1950s.
Their relationships of the 1950s? I'm going to leave out of the 1950s because the relationships, just because I am. Continue, please.
Where women no longer submitted.
Yep. Thank you.
To their damsel in distress roles.
Good appreciation over here. Good. Damsel in distress. Was that in quotation marks?
No.
Could we?
It's just my
It's got a nice appreciative ooh over here. Could we substitute that for stereotypical? Everyone's probably going to go damsel in distress, really. Distress roles.
And hence the typical Hollywood.
Love a bit of hands. Yep.
Happy endings challenge.
Good job. Hey, Mr. Docky, I don't think I pressed play on the recording.
No.
I think I did.
Yeah, Doc.
What about you? Oh, no, I did. Hi. Still here. Hollywood happy ending. Yeah?
Yeah.
Legend. Thanks, mate.
It's a challenge.
No, just, yeah.
Let's end it.
Thanks, mate. I can always rely on you, Matt, to just pick me up when
Yeah.
I need to be corrected. Thanks very much. Ah, we're good?
Yeah.
Has it been worthwhile already?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And that's just from following a simple process and talking to Hayley, and talking to Marla, and talking to Mads and Charlie, and the people around you, these very good thinkers. Tom probably rates a mention there too, right? Thanks for your contributions, keep it going. As one of those contributors, it's a very good forum to clarify your thinking and maybe get a little appreciative of ooh from the other side of the room. So this is effective study. This is something that I think if you come in your holidays, see if you can come to other sessions thereafter. Right? I think it's helpful when you get to have to do it at home by yourselves. Now, we have a contention. Yours might be different, should be different to that. Consider the stronger one and roll with it. We've got to get to this bit of construction. So, in gathering some evidence to support our case one way or the other, let's frame that evidence with Hitchcock's construction and then at the centre of it. Have you had time to come up with some evidence? Because I didn't get to it in my plan. Marla, help me out.
I was going to focus a bit on how at the end it seems like, well, to Jeff especially, it seems like he's sort of reached a really good place with Lisa, but it's because Lisa has just like changed into what he wants her to be, but she actually hasn't changed.
Yeah, okay.
At the end.
Good. So he's more comfortable, given that she's demonstrated she's adventurous,
Yeah.
willing to take risks, like the life that he's established is for himself.
But the fact that she, like, when she picks up the other magazine, it shows that she hasn't actually completely changed, and that could be a topic.
Good. What is missing? This is excellent. Excellent. What is missing from Marla's piece of evidence at planning stage? How to do the task. What are we going to do?
What does this task require of us?
Right. What are we going to do? Students of mine will be sick of me saying this. Yeah, you got to do that. And? Yeah. You've got to get to the director's construction meeting. So all I'm going to do in your plan is Hitchcock's portrayal. Or in which that's just a cheap effort. But at least it's there at planning stage. When I come back to look at the plan in the third paragraph, I've got it there. Right? And I'm reminding myself in my topic sentence that that's my focus, and it's more likely then that for each sentence that follows, I will focus on the director's construction. And it's really helpful to remind yourself by making sure it's there at the first instance, and then hopefully it'll come in the way you use evidence. We avoid summary, we get to analysis instead. Good job. Jeff reaches a comfortable place in his relationship. However, and if we're going to include this guy, let's include the other people who are important. Viewers see that she hasn't changed at all.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah. Viewers wonder if Lisa has actually changed. Now these red notes, that's not that bad. These red notes are ugly and messy and they're all over the shop. But that's okay. Planning in time conditions is necessarily messy. Embrace that. And when you come back to review it as you're writing your essay, you can neaten it up, you can tidy it, you can make it more sophisticated. Thank you very much, Marla. Good job. Other suggestions, other arguments? Yep, Tom.
At the film's conclusion, Hitchcock positions the viewers to witness a shift in the power dynamic of Jeff and Lisa's relationship.
Okay.
Pretty similar to mine.
Yeah, okay. Go again, Hitchcock positions viewers?
Position the viewers to witness a shift in the power dynamic of Jeff and Lisa's relationship.
Good. I'm going to make notes on your notes. And I'm trying to move on. Yep. Cool.
It's not in a sentence, but something about the bad guy getting caught, but the bad guy was actually a medical for Jeff's struggles.
Yeah,
So something
excellent.
like that.
Yeah, good. The villain is held to account.
Would you bring up with that like someone still died?
Yeah.
Essentially, like someone was still dead.
And?
Or is that irrelevant?
Well, no.
Well, despite everything.
Yeah, it's not a stereotypical happy ending because there was
someone's
death
dead.
and a fall. That's kind of concerning.
Yeah.
Alright. Even though the music might suggest that things are more serene and that the temperature gauge has dropped and that she gazes over him lovingly, affectionately, and he's relaxed now. The first worry about was at the start of the film. There has been a murder in his neighbourhood, which we can't. It would be remiss of us to forget that. Yes, write it down. The villain is held to account, which is like justice prevails. And as through that, perhaps his voyeurism is justified, arguably. But, go back to your reason.
He was always the medical for Jeff's
Yeah, good.
inner struggles.
The world functions as Jesse,
Yeah.
and then CPR for men. So, the character has a function other than being a character. He's not a real character, he's part of Jeff's psyche. Cool, good job. That gets to the construction of meanings. And in fairness, Mother, I haven't, in either of these, I've got Hitchcock there, I haven't got Hitchcock here, but I need to get better at that. Alright, so we've got 3 arguments, 2 are similar. Can we have a 4th as a thanks, Mads?
I don't know about it though.
That's alright, that's what we're here to do.
Hitchcock's construction of Jeff's impotence throughout the film provides the viewer with the implication that a happy ending may only be achieved if one has complete control over the other.
High five, some mutual appreciation. Good job. Construction of Jeff's impotence. Go again, Mads.
Throughout the film, provides the viewer with the implication that a happy ending may only be achieved if one has complete control over the other.
Alright. Therefore, it's not a happy ending. Because there's compromise. Alright. Do you think that's what Hitchcock is pushing?
It could be.
What do you think? It could be. You could argue that.
I think he's pushing gender roles and the change in it, which is supported by the fact that Lisa seems to have control over him by the end of the film. But it's not his main sort of message.
Okay. The ending does frame our response to the whole text. It's deliberately constructed, I think, with ambiguity, so that we are constantly asking questions, and that we go and have a coffee afterwards and ask questions about the meaning of the film, and that, what, 7 years later or more, we can continue to figure it out. I think that's part of the power I would offer up a counter argument to the idea of complete control being the source of happiness, and I'd suggest that Hitchcock's hoping we achieve some sort of compromise, or that each player in a relationship, each partner, complements the other, or makes up for their lacking and appreciates that. So through compromise we might achieve happiness. The good thing about here is that it gives us that talking point. And if you did that in your essay, you could present the counter-argument for yourself, right? All within the same paragraph. And all the while demonstrating that you've thought carefully, and you might still be making up your mind, but you've got to a conclusion to figure that out one way or the other. Right, good job. Thanks to contributors. Here's what I did, and this is this morning, and I got really happy with colours, trying to show the grey area in my thinking with grey text. This is where you... That was my big moment. Although the film restores order with most plot lines, and I'm talking about relationships there. This Lonely Hearts and the composer, good job. New resident in Thor's apartment, painted white. Nice. Most things resolve. Stanley gets home from military service or training or wherever he's been, to go to the fridge and get a sandwich. The conclusion to Hitchcock's Rear Window is not a happy Hollywood ending. Is there grey area there? Not really. I'm acknowledging one point, but here I'm saying it sits about here. I'm not going whole hog and saying, no, it's not, what are you talking about, Hollywood happy ending? I'm saying, yes, you could argue that case, but I'm not going to argue it. Wherever you fit, as long as you're not at the extremes, I think that gives you a chance to explore your ideas and demonstrate complex thinking. The film remains ambiguous as the credits roll, demanding viewers bring their own views and values to the film. The ending forces the audience to feel unsettled and try to resolve the problems posed by gender stereotypes and established patriarchy, which dictated social values in 1950s America. By situating us as participants in the narrative, we are invited to consider how we view events from a patriarchal perspective and reconsider the reliability of a male-centered point of view. Hitchcock follows the established conventions of Hollywood self-managed with a three-act structure so as to set up the audience's expectations and then challenge the viewer's assumptions about the characters and what they represent. In this way, the creator asks us to examine the ethical dilemma posed by voyeurs in a society that increasingly prizes and prioritises others. I don't know if that's relevant. I'm not sure. The audience cannot be satisfied, and this is the conclusion, that this is a happy Hollywood ending because Hitchcock hopes we are dissatisfied with ourselves. Real life and real communities breaking down in 1950s America. While on one level Hitchcock endorses neighbourliness, this word, I hope, he urges viewers to examine their own attitudes towards the people who form the now for their community. Where I've got, in my planning, specific effort to focus on the director's construction of meaning. I've got only a couple of little bits here with context, and hopefully it bleeds through in my linking sentences that I know the word of the text. No, but I'm going to try and trick the assessor. I've deliberately got in each of those bits something of the audience. I've tried to show that I'm being great in my thinking and that I've led to some sort of interpretation. Right? So I finished my plan, and that took way too long. It took about 10 minutes to get to that point. It certainly wasn't the 6 minutes that I gave you. But you had a look at the sample, you've got your peers' arguments up on the board, and we've stepped through that process of deconstructing this question. So, 4 minutes, because I go down to 10 minutes, 4 minutes to write up your plan and perhaps have your contention, argument 1, 2, 3, and that's the product of our collaborative thinking. Right, we'll come back to that planning task in your own time. Hopefully, you've sort of figured out a little bit about the process, and you can think a little more deeply when it comes to replicating time conditions at home in the study. So do refer to that process. I'll shoot these notes around, print it out, put it up in the study space. Step through a minute on each, and even by making sure you've got some background information in there, that's going to lead to higher engagement. By making sure that the contention's got a little bit of subtlety to it, a little bit of nuance, that's going to lead to a higher end response. Take it from 6 to a 7, jump up 1 point. Now, I did say that today was going to be focused on too many questions and following the process. Do you feel like you want to do it again? You want to do that whole process again with this question? And that's asking a bit of you because, you know, it's your holiday time and it's early.
Yeah.
Show of hands, and we'll skip ahead if you don't want to do it. That's cool. I reckon that's almost half. That's one half. All right, we'll do it again. So, first 6 minutes, I want you to scribble down this question. This one, I think, comes from the Data Study Guide. And in your booklet, there's 20 questions of one of those. Again, to what extent do the female characters of this film both criticise the values of their world, yet also act as guides for the male characters? Copy down, 6 minutes on the clock. In a minute, I'll go back to the instructions, the process to follow, and I'll call out the minutes. So scribble it down if you haven't already. I'll do the same. All right. Do you want to do it by yourselves or do you want to do it together? Together. Right, we'll step through. I don't know how likely it is that we'll get a question as wordy and complicated as this one on the exam. Did you find that in writing it out? Kind of hard to get your head around. All right. So we just follow the cues that are there to guide us. Again, to what extent? So we've got to figure out. Oh, Jesus! Gee whiz. We've got to figure out to what extent we agree with one end of the scale or the other end of the scale. So let's just figure out what the two ends are. That's 1 point. Criticise the values is the other point. So our focus here is on the female characters. So on the scale, where do we sit with other female characters? Critical of the values of their world, or guides to the men? Alright, where, Tom, do you fit here? And
I just had a
sorry.
topic question.
Sure.
What did you mean by criticise the values of their world?
Yep.
Like, is that
Good question.
kind of attacking the stereotypes or their own individual judgment of what's right and wrong?
Attacking the what stereotypes do you think we might think?
Just like gender roles.
Yep, what else?
I can't think at the moment.
Marriage.
Yeah.
And
Just-
roles within it.
Yeah, just roles in women.
Yeah. The values of their world could look at economic values. We're certainly getting an opportunity to talk about neighbourliness and togetherness and community. There we go, there's that word. But apparently this is post-World War II, and hence there's a Cold War a Cold War occurring, and we might pit those two political ideologies against one another, communism and capitalism.
I took it differently about them criticising their values. Could you look at how, like, Stella went back on her morals rather than...
Yeah. And I think, Tom, that was what you also mentioned.
Yeah.
Where you were talking about right and wrong.
Yeah.
Morality and voyeurism.
Because the entire time Stella's like the moral compass, and then you see her go back, like her behaviour doesn't support her values.
Good. And then perhaps there's a message that we need to act out values. Good.
Could you say they did both? They firstly criticised and they transitioned into actually doing it.
Good. If you did that, mate, that's about where you fit. Hands up if that's what you wanted to do. Cool. There's grey area. Nice. And then you've unlocked all of the potential of the question, and the challenge is, how do I manage all of that stuff in only an hour? So we've got to be selective there. All right. Do we understand the question? Type yes, we've identified to what extent, and we've got a little scale. How do we define key terms? Tom, you wanted to talk about values of their world, and we've stepped through what that might include. Just so that we know the parameters, who are the female characters we're probably going to talk about? Who else? Who else? Who else?
This is all.
Oh,
the girl.
The girl one.
Sorry?
Someone said yearly weds.
Oh, that's the artist.
Oh, yeah.
The sculptor, even.
All right, good.
Lady who hangs her bird out.
Lady who hangs her bird out.
Oh no.
Is that a colloquial? Where are you from?
What?
Does that mean something in your neck of the woods? That
No, at the
Okay,
start
good.
of film.
At the start of the film,
I was going to be concerned that hanging your bird out might mean something else.
Oh no.
Right, moving right along. Actors' guides for the male characters. Sorry. Guides. To help me here. What does guides mean?
Well, I suppose Stella, like they look after LB,
Yeah, good.
push him around in his
Do you mean
wheelchair and massage him.
Like mothering or something like that?
Pardon?
Could you talk about them like mothering perhaps?
Yeah.
Stella also kind of polices at the start, doesn't she?
Yeah. I've got a nose for trouble.
There you go. That's the fuzz.
You look at Lisa's manipulation of the situation to get what she wants. She's guiding Jeff to do what she wants.
Yeah, good. Alright.
It's like the classic superhero with the girl, like, and she asks the questions that lead into figuring it out.
Yeah, but he got there, it was his idea
Yeah.
to save the world from destruction. Yeah.
Which then reflects gender roles.
Yeah, cool. And how dumb. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. So, there's like an established conventional relationship between men and women. And does this fit into that? Or does it challenge the conventional relationship? Does the film... Oh, here we go. Now I'm getting all contexty, which is not a good thing to do. Does the film challenge the conventions? Oh my goodness. Of gender stereotypes. Oh, I hope that makes sense to me. All right. Don't copy it down because I'm still working on it. Okay. And I would argue, yes, it does try to. I don't know if it actually does. I don't know if he intended to, but I'm going to push it there because then I perhaps can show that I thought pretty carefully about the question. Right. It's a really difficult question. Have we got a contention?
Sort of.
We sort of figured out. I reckon. Are we going with Lamb?
Yeah.
That they do both?
Yeah.
Alright, here's our contention. Both. Do not write, I think that both of these statements are true.
Yes.
Yeah, don't write, yes, I agree. And shit you not, assessments, that one. Assessments last year, students in the introduction. Yes, I agree with the idea that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. People in the exam will do it, don't do one of them. Alright? I think for this question, we're getting to somewhere interpretive. I think. But I am conscious of us needing to move on, and this can be perhaps become something that you follow up at home. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that needs to be said about this before we move on?
No.
You happy?
Yeah.
Anyone got any profound idea? It is. I think that's one that you might. I deliberately avoided it with this stuff because I thought you might not get time to do it.
I have some question. So you know if you use a piece of evidence like a close-up shot or something that's like solid evidence, could you use the casting of Grace Tully? Is that solid
Definitely, yes. By all means. That is a deliberate decision made in the production process that is entirely influential on the portrayal of her character as a representative of women at the time and therefore values of the time. Yeah, the casting of Grace Kelly. And if you're going to do that, look at the casting of Jimmy Stewart and Raymond Burr, the villain. Look at those deliberate decisions that were made. Why were those people selected from the presumably hundreds of applicants? I need to do some research. Yeah, definitely. The casting choice, I would say, perhaps got more potential than looking at the close-up of his sweating head. Alright, cool. Okay, quick bit on question types. In my experience, and I think it's fair to say that there are 5 types of questions. Is that enough? Some sort of... You're happy enough with that? We've been talking about that for a little bit with year 11 as well. That sometimes you'll get a question that's based on a character. Tom Doyle, the detective, for instance. What's his role in the film? I got a bit lazy there. And you know those kinds of questions. How does Stanley dig the hole in the hot desert with a shovel? Yes? Theme. What does the film suggest about marriage? That's a lazy question again. But the theme is, or the big idea that it seeks to get you to respond to is marriage. Don't copy these ones now. Because they're a bit shy. Style, you might get a question that deliberately addresses Hitchcock's construction of meaning and a specific element of the film's construction. So, does Hitchcock's narrative structure discuss it? What to do? Its purpose with an apostrophe where it shouldn't be. I've put in a possessive apostrophe, it's not right. In relation to key scenes. Proofread. 4th example is context, and I think it's more likely that you get a context question in the SAC than the exam. Last year there was a context question in the SAC and the exam. I don't know. You're probably not going to get something as specific as HUAC. More likely that you get something like values of their world, and then you can be specific. But this here has elements of context to it. And the 5th type is where there's a statement, a proposition put, and then you've got to respond to it. To what extent do you agree, proofread?
What's HUAC?
The House of Un-American Activities Committee.
Red's under the bed.
Studied the principle last year.
Yes.
Read the notes of the play if you still got it.
Yeah.
And it's about a page and a half. It covers it really, really well and connects it to that text, and then you can consider the parallels.
Yeah.
That's it.
Those are 5 types of questions. Each of them you need to be used to. You need to be able to identify the type of question you're being asked, right, so that you know how to respond to it. Is that all pretty straightforward?
Yes.
No new stuff? Are there any questions about that?
No.
Good. Let's move on. Thanks, Mads. However, more important than type of question is the instruction that is given in the question. You must follow the conventions that are suggested by or that are required of the question. So discuss Stella's role as the moral compass in the film. That means you must look at her as the moral compass, but her other roles in the film as well. So we can talk about her and her connection with us as viewers, and be somewhat different to her just having a moral outlook to shape our views. Perhaps we could consider something else of her character, how she's easily drawn in, how she has a strong sense of right and wrong from the outset, and that's part of her function. 2, Stella acts as our moral compass. Do you agree? That requires a different sort of response. That's like the scale. That yes, I agree that she's a moral compass, or no, I have strong things to say in opposition to that statement. Where do we fit? Same thing with this. To what extent do you agree? Where on the scale do we fit? And finally, how does Hitchcock present Stella as the moral arbiter in reading that? Lots of kids would miss this key word here. That's a construction question or a style question. And that's the instruction we're given. So we must frame our response. All topic sentences, all arguments must look at construction of meaning, must look at film devices. So your topic sentence have to look at look at the construction of meaning. Otherwise, it's an irrelevant response. Even if you go and talk about Stella as the moral arbiter and you present some interesting arguments, you've got to get to the instruction in the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you don't, the assessor will deem it irrelevant. And you can write a Stella essay on Stella without actually winning many marks because you haven't answered the question. So more important than the previous slide of types of questions, identify in your planning the instruction given and respond accordingly. Now I've got lazy here. I want you guys to help me out with this before the SAP. Let me know of visual organisers that you can use to frame your responses, to plan in an organised way your responses as appropriate to the instruction in the question. I'll come back to that, and that will become even more important when we get to organising your ideas before writing a comparative essay in Unit 4 with black diggers and the longest memory. Right, we've got to be able to organise a lot of big ideas in a coherent way so that it comes through in our writing. Visual organisers are our friend. All right, we've got a limited amount of time. I was going to ask you to write an introduction to the question you just planned. Following these 5 things. So we're going to do this. I'm going to ask you to do this. And we're going to do it in time conditions. I'm going to get you to write an introduction in 7 minutes and 7 minutes only, which hopefully, if you can nail, becomes the basis of a strong response. We all write at different speeds. I would advise you spend only about 7 minutes on an introduction in the hour. All right? Having planned for 5, in 7 minutes we should be able to cover all that an introduction needs. Those points are up on the board. First of all, I want you to answer the question directly, and all your teachers and all your assessors hope that you get to the question straight up. A lot of the holiday essays that we looked at were kind of fluff and padding out, especially early on because, like us, you guys perhaps weren't as familiar with the film as you are now. Definitely weren't as familiar with the film as you are now. And we can pick that because that's what teaching is. We bullshit our way through stuff. You've seen me do that for an hour and a half almost, right? We don't, in a text response essay, we don't want to be bullshitting too much. You can't waste words. We've got to use every word to prove that you're doing the task. So get into the question straight away. Instead of how many times in your Year 11 responses, in Michael Looning's collection of stories, The Lot, and then insert words of the question. That's formulaic, and while it's directly answering the question, let's do that and show that you're a thinker as well. 2, get to some context. Like we said, bit of background opens up those doors, yeah? What's your name?
Anastasia.
Anastasia, I'm going to remember you as the background context student. You did a good job. Contention find that grey area. It can be concise. Don't be afraid of a short sentence, because it reminds you and your assessor of what the heck you meant to be talking about. It can also be complex, but not convoluted. Not complicated. Complex, yes. But that's your cornerstone, foundation stone. What's the stone that holds it all? Keystone. The keystone in your archway that you're building holds it all together. Right? And once you've got that, you've got the guts of the essay.
Isn't that kind of the same as the first bit?
Yeah, it is. However, here, I'm hoping that you open up discussion. And in the next step, that you open up further with relevant contextual stuff. By the third sentence, however, having demonstrated that you know the world of the text and that you understand what the question is asking, then you get to the guts of it. So this is more specific than this. We're building up to, and it gives you 2 sentences to help refine your contention and to figure out that grey area. Yeah? Although, some people might argue this, I'm really clever and I'm also going to consider this bit. Yeah. Signpost 3 or 4 main arguments. Some teachers don't want you to do that. I do. I think it gives you a structure to work back towards or back from as you're writing your essay. And finally, a succinct statement about the director's purpose. If you're running shy of time in the next 7 minutes, you can combine these elements, but I would like you to practice keeping it in that sequence, please. Yeah.
Is this for that?
Well, up to you. In the paper, I've even given you some sample intros and then a space. Let's see. I've written that question that you just planned, that hard one. Right? So let's have a look. These are 2 intros that I did with my classes, with either of my classes, in 7 minutes, and then I went back and added some colour. I didn't follow my own process as perfectly as I would have liked, but it's 7 minutes. Time goes. So I've got to make sure that I'm practicing this thing, and if I practice more, I'll be able to squeeze more in, or I'll have more of those stock phrases I'll be able to use. So the second one actually does probably a better job than the first. Alright, so the first question on page 2 reads, how does Rear Window force its audience to question the values and roles expected of characters in their society? Not too different from the one that you'll do. Answer the question directly. You can assess how well I've done here. Hitchcock's Rear Window seeks to question the traditional values and stereotypical roles expected of the characters he places in the Greenwich Village apartment complex. Traditional values and stereotypical roles, values and roles. So in my first sentence, I've got those keywords. I've got Hitchcock, and I've got a little bit about where it's set. Yeah. Right. But I haven't got my contention quite yet. Building to that. Released in 1954, the film captures an atmosphere where, if you can read it, you're doing well, where women no longer accepted their submissive roles. Hitchcock asks viewers to consider their own expectations of men and women at this significant point in history. So that's the direction of my essay. I'm looking at gender roles, even though the questions are talking more generally about values and roles expected of the characters. I'm steering this to something that I know about, that I'm going to try and bluff my way through, to do with gender roles. Thirdly, contention. By placing the audience in the role as voyeur alongside Jeff, or with Jeff, the director forces us to make assumptions about each of the characters on the metaphorical screen across the courtyard. That was Beck and maybe some of the fate study right? But it's become a stock phrase that I can refer to. And then I signpost not 3 or 4, but I think 2 arguments in the pink. And then finally, the purpose of this film is to. And that's a bit clunky, a bit formulaic, but you know what? It's an intro and writing time conditions. I'm churning through the process. I'm trying to write quickly. So, that's a phrase that I can get to. If the assessor recognises that your work is highly structured, they will not bring it down. That's a way for you to help them do their job. Where you don't have structure, you don't have purpose statements at the end of an intro, they're left sort of wondering what you understand of the text. Yeah? So, there's another sample over the page. Have a look at that in your own time. We better get to some writing time. You've got 7 minutes, and I've left some space for planning, but I think you've already done your plan for this question. Is that correct? All right. So, please turn to page 5 And at the top of that page, you will see this question that we've started to plan here.
Yeah.
Take a big deep breath. 7 minutes on the clock. For each minute, you want to step through each of these processes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. Go. See, I think at this stage, you stepping through the process and trusting what you're writing is good. And with each sentence, hopefully building confidence that the next one's going to be just as good or better. Because the assessors are, in the 2017 assessors report, they're looking for people who have command of the English language but who are writing confidently. And to achieve that, you've got to be confident. And I know that that's not easy to manufacture. You get used to thinking positively as you write. And trusting that by following a sequence, you're doing the task. And by doing the task, you're giving yourself a chance of showing your knowledge and that you're a good thinker. That's all we're after. Okay, we're going to skip through. We've got 15 minutes left, and I haven't covered as much as I thought I would, but that's okay. I think the stuff that you've shared up on board has been really worthwhile. If you turn to page 6, please, in your little booklet, and a note to those listening at home, it is incomplete in this version, that's okay. There's some linking sentences that I'll email around. Here's a sample body paragraph. Now, I've got to be honest, I was pressed for time this morning and I grabbed something that I did late last term. Liam, when you and I were sitting down together with that close scene analysis, this is sort of what I came up with. And I've sent through that version that's up on the screen, but since this morning I've added these couple of sentences so that I'm following my own advice and getting a full, complete paragraph. Now, what I want to demonstrate here is the need to closely examine the relationship between the director and the audience. So this task here, students are selecting the scene, they're presenting it to class. Part of that process, they're writing their own essay question. And some of the questions, because it's a close scene analysis, some of the questions are a little bit too specific or are more specific to that scene than you might encounter in a Saccharin exam. And this question reads, Hitchcock plays with our assumptions about the murder through his narrative structure. You're not going to get that question in an exam. It's way too specific. It's not going to steer you towards a particular scene. I don't think the last one we looked at steered us towards the ending. So maybe I'm wrong. To write well in time conditions, I reckon 13 minutes for a body paragraph is sufficient. And however much you write in that 13 minutes, that's up to your own writing speed, thinking ability, and how much practice you've done. The more practice you do, arguably, the more you'll get done in your allocated 13 minutes. 13 minutes is an odd number, but like the 7, it's giving you a chance to recognise that time goes, that this task is about time management, essentially, and I want you to start practicing with 13-minute paragraphs. This probably took me a little bit longer, in fairness, because I went back and reviewed and paused and wrote, and it wasn't done in time conditions. The purpose of this is to see where I've analysed and where I've used evidence. Where I've used evidence, where I've analysed. So, topic sentence. The director plays with our assumptions through clever editing and limiting our view. I'm engaging with the question. I'm looking at the construction of meaning, and I've got an argument there. Those are the 3 things a topic sentence should do. Nice cool brown shade. The murder scene follows a heated argument between Jeff and Lisa, which helps us to understand that Thorwald's are a projection of Jeff's fears about his future in wedlock. All that does is develop my argument. It's a key step that sometimes students forget, especially in time conditions. That second E in teal, where you explain, is really important. It shows the assessor that you've thought about the evidence and you're not just whacking it in because it's a quote you've memorised or a scene you know particularly well. It's leading towards more insightful analysis of the evidence you're about to present. Too often, students start a topic sentence with an example, or write a topic sentence and then jump straight into an example. If you do that, you're missing an opportunity to set up your thinking and to set up the evidence you're about to present as complex. So do the second step, explain. It's really important for when you're making those links with context, or when you're making those links at linking sentence level, so that the essay has some fluency. And then I'm getting into my evidence and analysis. And this is the stuff that wins marks, essentially. This is what should become economic and focused. And this is your bread and butter. This is a history teacher in my last place, good mate of mine, Butch. He was ex-military, he was a big unit. I got to tour the US with Butch, and whenever we'd go down the mall, he'd be approached by a soldier. Have you considered enlisting in the... And he would trade war stories, and I'd go into a shop somewhere. Butch, his phrase as a history teacher was press the download button, and you would just go boom, that makes sense, for 7 minutes, and you'd get evidence and analysis, and as much of your knowledge as you possibly could. Ideally, you'd show a range of examples from across the text to show that you've viewed the whole thing. My piece, I've only looked at one scene, but that's because of the nature of the task, all right? So try to show a range of evidence. And here I've got, at this critical point, Hitchcock continues to use the motif of food, where characters are seen to be hungry for something and viewers recognise their drastic efforts to satisfy their yearnings. Evidence. As Lisa leaves Jeff by the window to prepare the perfect dinner in a separate room, the director mirrors the ceremony across the way in the Thor department. Still evidence, no analysis really. Get to the point, Bennett. Clever editing helps, here we go. Viewers see a connection between the two apartments. That's it. It's not difficult, but I've gotten to evidence chunk, and then viewer response. Try and tighten it up. That would be my advice for myself here. Tighten it up so that you are hopefully getting to evidence and analysis in one sentence through being economical. Now, you don't have to stick to that rule, but if you can do that once in a paragraph, awesome. Bless you. I'll leave you guys to work your way through that. Have a look at where I've tried to be analytical after using some evidence, and I'm trying to return back to my argument in response to the question. Fifth last sentence, perhaps. The sharp scream of shattering glass of Anna Thor. It's specific oral cues. There's specificity and detail in the evidence I'm presenting. Two shocking oral cues that heighten our alarm, and the darting point of view shot, coupled with the cross-cut to Jeff's inquisitive expression, all combine to form the pivotal moment in the film where we must question the nature of the murder. I don't know, that's wording of the question. I've got to get back to the question. In an anticlimax, Jeff falls asleep, but the film's focus on marital relationships has only just begun. That idea is incomplete, I'm going to develop that. But then hopefully I get to some linking and some interpretation. We are positioned as detectives, and this key scene is most important when we consider how Hitchcock uses it to set up our assumptions at the end of the opening act. Typo. In this way, the director is able to encourage his audience to participate in the narrative and examine their own behaviours more closely. Examine their own behaviours? What a wishy-washy, generalised statement. I've got to get more specific there. But it was a last-ditch effort to show you that I need to link this up to get to some interpretation of how viewers and the director are communicating through the film. Are there any questions? Go. go read through. This took me longer than 13 minutes to do. Go and write an extended